Hey there, budding entrepreneurs. This is my OC Bookkeeper's comprehensive guide to starting a business in California. My name is Brian from My OC Bookkeeper. I will be walking you through this guide today. If you're thinking about or in the process of starting a new business, there's a lot of exciting things to work on, but navigating the regulatory landscape is not one of them. So this guide is designed to make that process a little bit easier, quicker, and more efficient for you, as well as to help you to make informed decisions along the way and ensure you don't miss out on any important steps. Now, if you prefer reading, we also have a great blog post at myocbookkeeper.com. The title is Starting a Business in Orange County, California, or it might be Setting Up a Business in Orange County, California. While it says Orange County in the title, that blog post is applicable to the entirety of California and is quite similar in content to this guide here. Now, if you're not in California, this guide can also be quite helpful as most of the content will be applicable and probably 10% won't. And the only difference really will be is you'll have to look into your local, check out your local websites and do a little local research to find out some of the finer details. But a lot of the big picture content will be the same. Quick disclaimer, at my OC Bookkeeper, we are not lawyers, so this is not legal advice. As I said, this is designed to provide you with a foundation of knowledge and thereby make the process easier for you and help you to avoid mistakes. So let's get going here. Now, when you're going to set up a business, the first thing you need to think about is what kind of business you want to set up. There are 7 basic business types for you to consider. There are sole proprietorships, limited liability companies, corporations, limited partnerships, general partnerships, and limited liability partnerships. Now, we will go through each of these in turn and describe some of the most important characteristics. So, the sole proprietorship is very popular for the simple reason that it is the easiest and the cheapest. What's not to like about that, right? But there is a downside. With a sole proprietorship, the owner of the business and the business itself are considered the same thing. This means that the owner is personally responsible for all of the debts and liabilities of the business. So if somehow your business ends up losing $1 million, the people you owe that money to can come after your personal finances. So it's very important to remember that point. Now, another point to remember is that because the owner and the business are the same, the default name of the business is your name. If you don't want to use your name as the business name, which you probably don't want to do, you need to set up a fictitious business name, also known as a doing business as, also known as a DBA. Now, to do that, you go to your county website and download a form, fill out the form, and you'll bring it to the county clerk's office. You have to pay around $23, and then after that, you have to file a notice with an approved local newspaper. Yeah, I know it sounds strange, but for some reason, that's the way it's done. One important tip is, for one, you need to put the notice in the paper within 30 days after filing with the county clerk. And 2, be sure to get a list or a website with a list of the approved papers from the clerk's office and call several of them to get the prices, because they don't all charge the same amount. In Orange County, for example, most of them charge $60 or $70 for a single DBA. However, there's 1 or 2 that charge $25. So that's an easy way to save yourself some money. Now, beyond that, there's no specific documents which you necessarily need to file with the state of California, but depending on what you do, you may need various registrations. Now, that just means if you're selling firearms, for example, you're probably going to need to register with the county government and probably the city government. So check the city and county government websites and give them a call. You might be on hold for a few minutes, but oftentimes they can be quite helpful. And make sure you fill out all the required registrations. Okay, next we have the limited liability company. Like the sole proprietorship, this is also very, very popular with new companies, particularly small to medium-sized businesses. So what is unique and special about an LLC is that unlike the sole prop, the owner and the business are separate entities, which means that the ownership is protected from the business's debts. So that is the hugely important distinction between LLCs and sole props. Now, what are the downsides? For one, there's an $800 tax annually, which you have to pay. There's another $25 fee associated with the setup, so it's going to cost you more money. Also, there's a bit more paperwork. You'll need to file articles of organization with the state of California, and you'll need to complete an operating agreement, which describes the business you engage in with as well. Just like the sole prop, you also may need various registrations depending on what you do. So those first two, just as an aside here, are probably the most, or in fact, without a doubt, the most popular and common for new business owners. However, depending on the kind of business you're getting into, you may want to use one of the business types that follow. So next we have a corporation. Generally speaking, with a corporation, the business is distinct from the ownership, like in an LLC, which means, as in the LLC's case, the debts of the business are distinct from your personal finances. One of the unique things about a corporation is that a corporation can sell stocks and bonds to raise money. If that's something you're thinking about, obviously you're going to need a corporation. Other important points to remember: with a corporation, taxes are going to be paid at the company level, and then when money is distributed to shareholders, it's going to be taxed at the shareholder level as well. In terms of other things you need to do, you'll need to file articles of corporation with the California government, and like all the other types, depending on what you do, you may need various registrations. If you're thinking about starting a corporation, we recommend you talk to some sort of legal counsel, because it's a more complex entity than an LLC or a sole prop, which people often just set up by themselves. Okay, next we have a limited partnership. A limited partnership has at least one general partner and one limited partner. The general partner is the controlling partner and is personally responsible for liabilities. The limited partner, on the other hand, has less control, but they also have less liability and less ownership. So the general partner is sort of the leading voice in the company, if you will, but also has far more liability. Now, if you're thinking about setting up a limited partnership, you need to file a certificate of limited partnership with California. And again, as in the other cases, you may need various registrations. Okay, let's move on to general partnerships. Now, obviously, for a general partnership, you're going to need two or more partners. A GP or general partnership is similar to an LP, but in this case, there are no limited partners. So as a result, generally speaking, all of the partners are jointly liable. Also of note, with a GP, profits are going to be taxed as personal income, and you're going to need to file a statement of partnership authority with California. As has been the case with most of these more complex business types, we generally recommend you speak to legal counsel before setting up a GP. Now we move on to a limited liability partnership. A limited liability partnership is a partnership where the partners are engaging in a very specific list of industries. For example, law, architecture, and public accounting, land surveying. I don't know how many of you watching are thinking about getting into the land surveying business, but if so, thank you for watching, and pay attention now, my friends, because this is important for you. All right, now, with an LLP, you're required to maintain certain levels of insurance. You will definitely want to make sure you speak to either legal counsel or a state representative to make sure you satisfy that requirement. And you will need to file a limited liability partnership form with California, as with the other advanced business types that we generally recommend you speak to legal counsel. All right, so now you've decided what kind of business you want to set up. So we get to do something a bit more exciting. What name do you want, and is it available? So to check if the name you want for your business is available, first I recommend a business search. And we don't have links on this presentation, so I wrote out the text in this slide. But the California government, the Secretary of State government website has a search tool, which is a great place to start. I also recommend you try a quick trademark search. And finally, just do a quick Google search. It can't hurt because sometimes something might be brand new, it might be missed, etc. So it's just one little extra layer of protection, if you will, that we generally recommend. Now, to get a little bit more information on this topic, there's some pretty good material on the California Secretary of State website. So if you use the link we have written here, that can be helpful. And as a general rule, this should be no surprise. Names both need to be unique and should not be misleading to the public. So, if you're a pizza place, you probably shouldn't call your company Johnson's Oil and Gas Drilling Incorporated. Okay, now let's move on. Step 3, you need to get a federal employer ID. Don't worry, this is actually pretty easy, but it's something most businesses are going to be required to do. Basically, it's the number the federal government uses when taxing businesses, so it's kind of akin to a business social security number. Corporations, LLCs, and partnerships absolutely must have one. In the case of sole proprietorships, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We've got a link here with some information in that regard. However, even if you don't need one necessarily for your sole prop, oftentimes you might just want to get one. For one, it can provide you with more privacy. So if you ever need to provide your excuse me, a number representing your firm, you can use the EIN instead of a social security number. So a lot of times people don't want their social security numbers out in the ether too much because of the risk of identity theft. Some people prefer having an EIN as well because it seems nice and professional. And in some cases, you might need one. For example, if you're doing drop shipping, oftentimes a drop shipping partner wants to see your EIN. So if you're a sole prop and you want to drop ship, you probably need that EIN. All right, but as I said, it's actually pretty quick and easy. A little side note, EIN and FEIN, it's the same thing. It's just different strokes for different folks. Just if you Google IRS EIN, you should get to the application process pretty easily. And it takes about 15 minutes. You can only do one a day, but it's actually one of the easier steps you're going to have to take care of in this process. We've written down some of the basic information you usually will need when filling out your EIN form here, just to help you prepare. It's pretty obvious stuff: street address, legal names, kind of business, social security number, etc. The date you first paid wages, if you have, how many employees you think you'll have over the next 6 months, if it's not 0. When did you start the business? Pretty obvious stuff. Feel free to pause the video here if you want to take a closer look. But as I said, generally speaking, setting up your EIN should be a pretty easy thing to do. All right, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. Step 4, you're going to apply for relevant permits and registrations. Now, where you are and what you're doing is going to determine what kind of permits you will need. As I mentioned earlier, if you're selling alcohol, you're probably going to need some form of registration. So a great place to get information about these types of issues is the Cal Gold website. If you just Google Cal Gold, you should be able to find it. In addition, we definitely highly recommend you check your city and government websites, possibly give them a call, and that should help you to find out what else you need to do. It's better to be safe than sorry. You're going to have to probably take an afternoon, but it'll be worth it to make sure you're managing, you're satisfying your regulatory requirements. Okay, step 5, set up applicable bank and credit card accounts. So depending on the kind of business and the kind of business set up, this is not necessarily required. However, it can be helpful regardless. It helps to separate your business and personal finances, can help you stay organized, track your business activities, prepare for taxes, etc. It also can be good because it can help you to establish your credit history for the business. Um, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily required for all types. For example, sole props don't need to do it, but it's something worth considering even if you are a sole prop. Um, okay, and so how do you do it? This also varies depending on your bank, what you're doing, where you are. But generally speaking, you're going to need your DBA documentation if you have some, your EIN, your business license, and basic information about your business, obviously, as well. One nice resource for this kind of finding out the kind of stuff you may need is the U.S. Small Business Administration website. All right, now we're really getting into it. Step 6, satisfy ongoing requirements. As much as it might pain you, the regulatory hoops do not disappear after you complete your initial setup, and it's important you remain abreast of the things you're going to need to keep doing. I can tell you, I've seen many people who have set up LLCs, for example, and then may have decided to put that business on hold and have forgotten that they had to pay $800 of taxes a year for the LLC. So you're going to want to, stay on top of these regulatory issues moving forward. So, for example, if you set up a fictitious business name, you're going to need to renew it every 5 years. Likewise, as I said, LLCs and also corporations in California have to pay $800 or more in franchise tax annually. LLCs have to file statements of information every 2 years, and corporations have to file statements of information every 2 years. Those are some of the basic ongoing requirements, but certainly check the county and city websites when you're doing the registrations to make sure you make sure that you satisfy the ongoing registration requirements as well. Okay, now this is kind of a headache of a process. So what we've done here is we've accumulated some of the most helpful websites that will help you to navigate it. So definitely check out the California Secretary of State site, the California Business Portal. One way or another, you're eventually going to find your way to the California Franchise Tax Board. Feel free to pause the video here and jot down these websites because there's a good chance they can help you make this process a little easier because it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming. All right, well, that, my friends, is our comprehensive guide to setting up a business in California. I hope that it's helped. I'm pretty confident that it has. This process, as we've mentioned, can be a bit onerous, and having some basic foundational information can make it a lot easier. And that's what this is designed to do. A little bit about us. As I said, we are a MyOC bookkeeper. Our website is www.myocbookkeeper.com. We are a bookkeeping, accounting, tax, and strategic consulting firm in Orange County, California. But we work with companies all over California and all over the country. We really enjoy helping new businesses and helping small businesses in general to achieve their wildest business dreams. So if you are a business and looking for help in any of those fields, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help with all kinds of issues and problems. Also, please like our video if you enjoyed this. If you're starting a new business, you're going to need karma. So this is going to give you some good karma. You like our video, you subscribe to our channel, your karma is going to be overflowing and great success is likely to follow. Although that is not a formal legal statement. In any case, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed our video. Also, check out our blog. We've got some great written information about bookkeeping and accounting and strategic business planning. And also, as I said, we have a YouTube channel with some great videos as well. So this is Brian from IOC Bookkeeper. Thank you and have a nice day.